Have you ever kept a promise to someone who didn't keep theirs to you? Not out of weakness, not because you didn't notice, but because that's just who you are, and somewhere along the line, you forgot that not everyone is built the same way. I'm 63 years old. I taught high school history for 31 years in Dayton, Ohio. I coached JV baseball on the side, drove a '98 Silverado until the transmission gave out, and I made my own chili from scratch every October when the weather turned. I was not a complicated man. I liked simple things. My wife, June, used to say I was the most predictable person she'd ever met, and she meant it as a compliment. She passed 4 years ago. Breast cancer, 14 months from diagnosis to the end. And when she left, she took something with her that I haven't been able to name since. Not grief exactly. More like direction. Like a compass that still spins but can't find north. That's when the drinking started. Slowly at first. A beer after dinner. Then two. Then something stronger to get through the night. Then something stronger still to get through the mornings. By the time I understood what was happening to me, I was already somewhere I didn't recognize. My daughter's name is Suzanne. She's 34. She lives about 40 minutes from me, out in Beaver Creek, in a house with a 3-car garage and a backyard that costs more to maintain than my entire monthly pension. She married a man named Trent about 6 years ago. Trent sells commercial real estate. He wears the kind of shoes that don't have laces and talks about leverage and positioning the way other men talk about the weather. Suzanne and I used to be close, before Trent, before June died, before I became someone she had to manage, instead of someone she just loved. It was Suzanne who first mentioned the treatment center. She sat across from me at my kitchen table last February. I remember because there was still snow on the ground and the furnace was making that clicking sound I kept meaning to get fixed. And she looked at me the way you look at something that used to be good and isn't anymore. Not angry, just tired. "Dad," she said, "I found a place." The place was called Ridgeline Recovery. It was a 45-day inpatient program up near Columbus, about 90 minutes from my house. It cost more than I had sitting around, but Suzanne said she and Trent would help cover what my insurance didn't. She said it like it was easy, like it was already decided. "I'll come get you when you're done," she told me. "I promise. Day one on the outside, I'll be there." I believed her. I don't know why I'm still surprised by the things I believe. I won't tell you that 45 days at Ridgeline was easy, because it wasn't. The first week I wanted to leave every single morning. I made deals with myself in the dark. Just get through breakfast. Just get through group. Just get through one more night. The counselors there, they'd heard every version of that bargaining before. They were patient with it in a way that almost made me angrier than if they'd just told me to stop. But somewhere around week 3, something shifted. I started sleeping again. Really sleeping, the kind where you wake up and a few seconds pass before you remember where you are and what you've been carrying. Those few seconds started to feel like grace. I called Suzanne every Sunday. We had a 15-minute window for outside calls. She always answered. Asked how I was eating, whether the other men in my group were decent, if I needed anything sent up. She sounded like herself. She sounded like my daughter. The morning I was discharged, it was a Thursday in early April. One of those days Ohio gives you in spring that feels like an apology for everything it put you through in January. The trees were doing what trees do when they finally decide to come back, and the air smelled like wet earth and something green I couldn't identify. I had $62 in my wallet, my phone, the duffel bag I came in with, and the understanding, the absolute settled certainty, that my daughter would be in the parking lot. I signed my discharge papers at 8:15 in the morning. The woman at the front desk, a kind woman named Beverly, who had worked there for 11 years and had a son in the Navy, walked me out to the entrance and shook my hand and told me I'd done hard work. I thanked her. I walked outside. I found a bench near the parking lot entrance, and I sat down and I waited. 9 o'clock came, 9:30. I told myself traffic. I told myself maybe she'd texted and my phone hadn't caught a signal inside. I checked, nothing. I called, it rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I left a message that I tried to make sound casual, like I wasn't already feeling something cold move through me that had nothing to do with the morning air. By 10 o'clock I'd called 3 times. By 10:30 I'd stopped calling. I sat on that bench with my duffel bag between my feet and $62 in my pocket, and I watched other people get picked up. A man about my age, gray at the temples, who walked to a minivan where a woman and 2 teenagers jumped out to meet him. A younger guy, maybe late 20s, who got into a truck with an older couple His parents, I guessed, by the way his mother grabbed him. A woman who walked out and stopped and looked around, and then a dog came barreling out of a car before anyone else did, and she laughed the kind of laugh you can't fake. I watched all of them, and I thought about June, about how she would have been here at 8 o'clock. She would have been here at 7:30. She would have brought coffee in a thermos, and something wrapped in foil from the kitchen, and she would have been standing at the front door when they opened it, asking if she could come in early. I was sitting there doing the math on a cab, $62, 90 miles, that wasn't going to work, when I heard footsteps on the asphalt behind me. Excuse me. I turned around. He was maybe 40. Dark hair starting to go at the temples. He was dressed like he was coming from or going to somewhere important. Dress shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled up. He was holding 2 cups of coffee, the kind from a gas station, the foam cups with the cardboard sleeve. You've been sitting there a while, he said. I hope that's not out of line to notice. It's not, I said. He held out one of the cups. I've got one more than I need. I almost said no, old habit. But I was cold and I was tired, and something about the way he held it out, not offering, just holding, made me take it. Thank you, I said. He sat down on the other end of the bench, not close, just enough to be company without making it strange. Picking someone up? I asked. No, he said. I drive past here on my way into the office. Used to stop and sit sometimes. He paused. I was here a long time ago, different circumstances. I looked at him. My name's Adam, he said. Leonard, I said. Len. He nodded, turned the cup in his hands. You waiting for a ride? Apparently not, I said. And I meant it to come out wry, but it didn't. It just came out true. He didn't say anything for a moment. He drank his coffee. A truck pulled in, a woman got out, went inside. The trees along the edge of the lot moved in a slow way. Where are you headed? He asked. Dayton. I'm going through Dayton, he said. I can take you. I looked at him. You don't have to do that. I know I don't. There's a moment when someone offers you something they don't owe you, and you can feel the difference between charity and just decency. This felt like the second thing. All right, I said. Thank you. His car was a dark blue sedan, clean inside, the kind of clean that isn't showy, just habitual. He had a travel mug in the cup holder and a legal pad on the back seat with handwriting I didn't try to read. We rode for a while without talking. He had the radio on low, a news station, just murmur, and I watched Ohio go past the window, the flat, wide farmland that I've always found more comforting than I can explain. When you grow up in a place long enough, even its plainest features start to feel like home. About 20 minutes in, he said, Do you mind if I ask what you're going back to? My house, I said. Same as I left it, family. I thought about how to answer that. A daughter, I said. She was supposed to be my ride. He didn't say anything right away. Something came up, maybe, he said, not dismissive, more like leaving room. Maybe, I said. Can I ask you something? He said. Sure. You teach, right? Or you did. I turned and looked at him. How did you know that? He smiled, kept his eyes on the road. You have the look. My father was a teacher. There's something about the way teachers sit, like they're always halfway paying attention to a room that isn't there. I almost smiled at that. History, I said. 31 years. Fairmont High. Something changed in his face. Small, but I saw it. Fairmont, he said. In Kettering. That's right. He was quiet for a moment. His hands shifted slightly on the wheel. Mr. Tasker, he said. Not a question. I stared at him. That's me, he exhaled through his nose, slow and deliberate. I sat in your third period class in 2002, he said, sophomore year. I wore the same gray hoodie every day for 6 weeks until you pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay at home. I searched my memory. 2002. I had over 100 students a year for 31 years. The math doesn't work in favor of remembering. But there was something about the way he said gray hoodie. Adam, I said. Adam Kowalski. His jaw moved. You remember the hoodie, I said. And you used to eat lunch alone out by the gym entrance. He nodded. I remembered more than the hoodie. I remembered the counselor pulling me aside to tell me there were concerns at home. Father in and out. Mother working doubles at a hotel in Miamisburg. I remembered finding Adam in the hallway after the last bell one December afternoon, backpack over one shoulder, nowhere to be. You let me stay in your classroom, he said, after school, for 3 months that winter. You never made a production of it. You just left the door unlocked and the light on. You did your homework, I said. I didn't have anywhere else to go, he said. And one night when it was really cold, I don't know if you knew this, I didn't actually have a way home. And you drove me. And you didn't ask questions, you just drove. I remembered that night. A Tuesday, I was pretty sure. Ice on the roads. You stopped at McDonald's, he said. You bought me dinner. You said you were hungry anyway. I probably was, I said. You weren't, he said quietly. You'd already eaten, I could tell. We drove in silence for a little while. What do you do now? I asked. I'm an attorney, he said, estate and probate law. I've got a small firm, 4 of us, downtown Columbus. I took that in. That's a long way from the gym entrance. It is, he said. It took a while to get there. He paused, but I got there. We pulled off the highway near my exit. He knew the roads, knew where to turn, and I realized he must have looked up the address at some point, or maybe he just remembered from when I'd driven him all those years ago. He pulled up in front of my house. The lawn needed work. Mail was piled up inside the slot. The place had the look of somewhere that had been waiting. He put the car in park but didn't move to say goodbye. Mr. Tasker, he said, can I ask you something direct? You can, I said. Is your daughter's husband's name Trent? I looked at him. Trent Holloway, he said. Cold went through me. You know him. I know of him, Adam said. Not personally, but in my line of work you hear names. He turned toward me in his seat. I'm going to ask you something and I need you to answer me honestly. Do you have a will? Has anything been signed or changed in the last couple of years? I felt my stomach tighten. June and I had a will together. When she passed, everything came to me. The house is mine. We had some savings. Has Trent ever been involved in any of that? Conversations, paperwork, anything? I thought. About 6 months after June died, when I was still in the fog, still moving through days like they were rooms I didn't recognize, Trent had come over. Just him, not Suzanne. He'd brought a casserole from somewhere, and we'd sat at the kitchen table, and he'd said he wanted to help me get organized. He'd mentioned something about a financial advisor he trusted, a guy who handled estate planning. He'd been helpful. He'd seemed helpful. There were some documents, I said slowly. About a year and a half ago. Something about consolidating accounts. Restructuring for tax purposes, Trent said. Adam was very still. Did you sign anything? I tried to remember. I'd been drinking heavily by then. The pages had been long and formal, and Trent had been reassuring, and I had signed where he pointed, because I trusted Suzanne, and I thought Suzanne trusted him. I might have. I don't fully remember. Adam nodded, not in a judging way, in a way that said he'd heard versions of this before. Can I ask what you currently believe you own? He said. The house, I said. A savings account with about $40,000 in it. June's pension survivor benefit comes monthly. Okay, he said. He pulled out his phone and typed something brief. Then he looked up at me. I want to look into a few things. You don't have to agree to anything right now. But I want to make sure what you believe you own is actually what you own. Adam, you drove me home in an ice storm, he said. You bought me a hamburger, and you didn't make me feel like a charity case. You left your classroom door unlocked for an entire winter so a kid who had nowhere to go had somewhere to be. He held my gaze. Let me look into a few things. I didn't argue. He walked me to my door. I gave him the name of the financial advisor Trent had recommended. I'd kept the business card in my kitchen junk drawer, for reasons I couldn't have explained even then. Adam took a photo of it with his phone. He shook my hand at the door and told me to call him if anything else came to mind. Then he left, and I went inside, and I sat down at my kitchen table for the first time in 45 days, and I just sat there for a while. The furnace was still making that clicking sound. It took Adam 9 days. He called me on a Thursday afternoon. I was pulling weeds in the front yard, something to do with my hands, and he asked if he could come by that evening. I said yes. He arrived at 6:30 with a folder and a look I'd seen before. Not on attorneys. On teachers, when they had to call a parent in for a conversation the parent wasn't going to enjoy. Tell me what you found, I said. He put the folder on the table and he told me. The documents I'd signed 18 months ago, the ones Trent had described as account consolidation, had included a limited power of attorney, broad enough to authorize account management on my behalf. The financial advisor, a man named Stuart Vega, was someone Trent had used before. The savings account that I believed had $40,000 in it had over the past 14 months been drawn down through a series of transfers to an LLC. The LLC had Trent's name on the registration, buried under 2 layers of holding company. The balance remaining was $4,000 and change. I sat with that for a long moment. $36,000. Gone. Moved slowly enough that I hadn't noticed, or hadn't been capable of noticing, because I was drowning in grief and alcohol and whatever else I'd been drowning in. What about the house? I said. The house is still in your name, Adam said. There was a document in that packet about refinancing. I think they were working up to it, but it wasn't signed. Or if it was, it wasn't properly executed. Either they didn't get to it yet or something slowed them down. What about Suzanne? I asked. And I was surprised how hard it was to say her name right then. Adam was quiet for a moment. I don't know how much she knew, he said. I genuinely don't. I've seen situations where a spouse is fully aware, and situations where they're completely shielded from what's happening. It's possible she believed everything Trent told her. She didn't come pick me up, I said. I know. She promised she would. I know, Mr. Tasker. I sat back. The folder was on the table between us. The evening light was coming through the kitchen window at that angle it gets in spring, long and almost orange, and it hit the linoleum floor in a way that reminded me of every spring evening I'd ever sat in this kitchen with June. What can we do? I said. Adam straightened the folder. Quite a bit, actually, he said. The limited power of attorney was arguably improperly obtained. If we can establish that you were not in full cognitive capacity when you signed, which, given your documented condition at the time, a physician can speak to, that's a viable argument for voiding the document. The transfers from the LLC can be traced. Stu Vega's conduct is worth reporting to the Ohio Division of Securities, and Trent himself could face civil liability for financial elder abuse. I looked at him. Financial elder abuse. That's the legal classification, he said. In Ohio, it carries significant civil penalties. And if the criminal threshold is met, which it may be, that's a different conversation entirely. I thought about Trent in his no-lace shoes talking about leverage. How long? I said. Could be 6 months, could be a year. These things don't move fast, but they move. He folded his hands on the table. I want to be honest with you. You may not recover all of it, but you may recover most of it, and we can make sure it doesn't continue. I nodded. And Suzanne? I said again. That part, Adam said gently, is not a legal question. I knew that. I'd known it since I was sitting on that bench with $62 in my pocket, watching other people get picked up by the people who loved them. I called her that Sunday. She answered this ring, which told me she'd been expecting it, or maybe dreading it. Dad, she said. Her voice was careful in a way that wasn't Suzanne. It was practiced. Something about it made me think she'd been coached. I'm home, I said. I know. I'm sorry I couldn't. Trent said there was a conflict with the closing he had that day, and we only have the one car available. And Suzanne, I said. She stopped. I'm not calling about the ride, I said. I need to ask you about some documents I signed about 1.5 years ago, and I need you to answer me honest. Not the version Trent told you. What you actually know. A long pause. What documents? She said. But her voice had changed. The account consolidation, I said. The power of attorney. The financial advisor named Stuart Vega. Another pause. Longer, Dad, she said quietly. I didn't know what he was doing. I thought it was just, he said it was protecting your assets. He said it was what people do when. She stopped. When her voice came back, it was smaller. I thought it was protecting you. I listened to what she wasn't saying as much as what she was. She hadn't known the full picture, but she'd handed him access to it. She'd handed him trust that wasn't hers to give. Trent is going to have a visitor, I said. Not from me. From an attorney in Columbus. His name is Adam Kowalski. He's going to want to see documentation about those transfers. And I'd encourage you, this is your father talking, not anybody else. I'd encourage you to cooperate fully. Silence. Dad, she said, what's going to happen? I don't know yet, I said. That depends on some things. To Trent? To all of us, I said. I heard her breathing on the other end of the line, and under it, something that might have been crying, if she let it get that far. Suzanne had always held things back from the edge. Even as a little girl, she'd get hurt and stop just short of tears, like she'd decided she wouldn't give whatever it was the satisfaction. I should have been there, she said finally, very quietly. Yes, I said, you should have. That was all I said about it. Not because I wasn't angry, I was. I had been sitting with something cold and hard in my chest since April, and it didn't just dissolve because she said the right thing. But I was 63 years old, and I had spent 45 days learning that some things you carry without picking them apart every day. That's not forgiveness. That's just management. You decide what you give energy to and what you set down and check on later. Trent didn't call me. He hired a lawyer, which was his right, and that lawyer sent a letter to Adam, which was expected. What Trent didn't anticipate, and this is what Adam told me later, in that dry, careful way he had, was that Stuart Vega, when contacted by the Ohio Division of Securities, decided almost immediately that cooperation was in his own best interest. And Stuart Vega knew quite a bit. What Vega knew was enough. Over the following months, things moved the way Adam said they would, not fast, but they moved. There were depositions I sat through in a conference room in Columbus where I wore the one suit I still own, and I answered questions, and I told the truth, which was the only thing I knew how to do. There were documents I signed that were in my actual interest. There were conversations with Suzanne that were uncomfortable and necessary, and left both of us wrung out and somehow lighter. I got most of it back. Not all. $31,300, returned through a civil judgment and a settlement that Trent's lawyer negotiated because the alternative was considerably worse for Trent. Stuart Vega lost his license. Whether Trent faces anything further is a question still working its way through channels I don't fully understand. It's October now. I made my chili last weekend for the first time since June died. It's not as good as hers. It was never as good as hers. She had a way with the heat that I never cracked. But it's good enough. My neighbor's kid came over and had 2 bowls and said it was the best thing he'd eaten all week, which is either a compliment or a comment on the state of his household, and either way I'll take it. Suzanne came for dinner last month, without Trent. I didn't ask why, and she didn't explain. She sat at the kitchen table in the chair she's been sitting in since she was 4 years old, and we ate and talked about things that weren't the hard things. And then, toward the end of the night, she talked about some of the hard things, too. She said she'd been talking to someone, a counselor, working through what she'd missed and what she'd let herself not see. I told her that was good. I meant it. She hugged me at the door when she left. The kind of hug where you can feel that someone is trying to say something they don't have the words for yet. "I'll be there next time," she said. I didn't ask what she meant by next time. Maybe she didn't know exactly either. But it felt like a beginning of something, which is different from a promise. A promise is a fixed thing. A beginning moves. Adam came by last week. I made coffee and we sat on the porch and watched the leaves do what they do in October in Ohio, which is the best thing they do anywhere. He told me about a case he was working, nothing specific, and I told him about my neighbor's kid eating the chili. We talked like 2 people who don't need to explain the full arc of how they know each other, because they already know. Before he left, he said something I've been thinking about since. He said, "You probably don't remember this, but the day you drove me home in the ice, I asked you why you were helping me. And you said, because someone should, and you said it like it was the simplest thing in the world." I told him I didn't remember saying that. "You did," he said. "I've thought about it a lot of times over the years. Because someone should." He looked out at the yard. "That's a whole philosophy, if you let it be." I've been letting it be. The compass still spins sometimes. I still have nights that are harder than others. I'm not going to tell you that the last year resolved everything, because nothing resolves everything. What I can tell you is that I go to bed now without anything to dull the edges, and the edges are sharp sometimes, and I'm learning that sharp isn't the same as dangerous. A man who sat on the other end of a bench on a Thursday morning in April turned out to be someone I knew. Turned out to be someone I'd left a door unlocked for, once, a long time ago, without thinking much of it. I didn't do it to get anything back. I didn't do it as an investment. I did it because a kid needed somewhere to be and I had a room with the light on. That's all it was. I think about the people who count on you staying broken, who do what they do and then step back and wait for the damage to be permanent. What they don't account for is that sometimes a person walks back out of the hardest 45 days of his life and finds not what he expected, but something better than he deserved. The morning I left Ridgeline, I had $62 and a bench and a sky that looked like Ohio apologizing. And a stranger walked up with 2 cups of gas station coffee, and he held one out and I took it. I'm glad I took it.